I'm M. Sutter, better known as Pints and Panels.
And I'm Don Tess, better known as the Dawn of Beer.
Welcome to the 26th episode of the All About Beer podcast. Every 2 weeks, we talk with leading experts and take a deep dive into one topic in beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And if you're feeling generous, throw us a few bucks at our Patreon, patreon.com/allaboutbeer to support this show and others.
So, you know how we always ask people to give us a 5-star review on their favorite podcasting app?
Right. And we do it because those reviews really help the algorithms to show the podcast to other beer lovers.
Right. And so I want to up the ante on this. If anybody ever sees me in a brewery tap room and shows me their 5-star review, I'll buy you a beer.
I love that. Then you owe me a beer because I've given the show a 5-star review.
Awesome. Thank you, Em.
It would be
my pleasure. It would be my pleasure to buy you a beer. And it would be my pleasure to buy anybody a beer who gives the show a 5-star review. Please don't ding us down to 4 stars for my fumble just there.
Well, anyway, let's get to the program. Don, what do you know about IP theft? Because you're a lawyer, right?
I used to be a law talking guy, but I was a corporate finance guy, not really an IP guy. But anyways, I gave that all up to enter the lucrative world of podcast hosting. But I know IP is an issue near and dear to your heart because you're an artist, right?
Yes, and it must be protected at all costs. What you create is your identity. And if that gets changed in any way beyond your control, which is extra stressful, believe me, and there are a lot of gray areas too. So we're going to get into that with our 3 really awesome guests that are going to talk about trademark, IP, cease and desist, everything legal when it comes to beer. If you'd like to help support the All About Beer podcast, reach out to podcast@allaboutbeer.com.
Estrella Galicia is an independent family-owned brewery in northwest Spain, founded in 1906. Estrella Galicia Cerveza Especial is a world-class lager brewed using the finest Spanish malts, locally cultivated Galician hops, and the best brewing practices made out of the state-of-the-art facility in A Coruña. Recognized around the world for quality and exceptional character, Estrella Galicia is a beer like no other. To learn more about Estrella Galicia, follow them at Estrella Galicia USA on Instagram.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
Brian Kulbacki is a 2012 graduate of the American Brewers Guild Brewing School, where he took their intensive brewing science and engineering course for breweries and planning. Prior to that, he graduated from Boston Common with a double major in marketing and finance. He has worked in marketing for the New England Patriots, Revolution, and the Lakewood Blue Claws, as well as finance for Major League Baseball and Royal Caribbean Cruise Lines. He has also managed operations for a family business. Brian founded Departed Souls Brewing Company in 2014, which in 2015 opened its doors to become the first brewery in Jersey City, New Jersey since Prohibition, and the first brewery on the East Coast to craft gluten-free beer and dedicated equipment, along with traditional glutinous beers. The brewery has won medals at the Great American Beer Festival, World Beer Cup, the Best of Craft Beer Awards, among others. The brewery is now run by Brian's dog, Bogan. Welcome to the show, Brian.
Thank you very much for having me.
So this is actually, I believe Don wrote this question, but I
don't
really
think so. But let's blame each other.
Wait, you really IP theft adjacent? You didn't write that?
Did
I
not
write that?
I think
I
did.
wrote that? That's
but
so
we can
clever.
blame each other. Well, if it's clever, it definitely wasn't me.
I read that and I was like, that's a really good question. I will say, I write all my questions. I do all my writing really early in the morning when I just wake up. And so maybe the coffee hadn't, so I forgot. But anyway, what I know about
I don't know if the
brewery,
coffee ever hits me properly.
I don't normally drink coffee till like 8, and I probably wrote these at like 7. I don't know. Anyway, no, we're not here to talk about my sleeping habits. So your brewery leans pretty hard to what I would call IP theft adjacent. So you use what I've seen in your cans is that there is an I would use the word homage, and I feel like you would probably use the same.
I would use the word parody. I'd go with
Parody? Okay. Well,
Yeah.
so what changes do you have to do to make sure that, I saw one for the Ninja Turtles and I knew immediately
Not
that's
the
the
not the Ninja Turtles, turtles that look sort of like ninjas.
Yes. Well,
Right?
yes.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
The knockoff or whatever. How do you walk that tightrope? Because you do it often. And
We do.
yeah, as a brewery owner, if I were a brewery owner, that would freak me out. Because I just,
Yeah, it's
something in the mail shows up and I'm like, oh no, here we go.
I like I said, I like to call it parody, and I think parody law is something a lot of brewers that sort of do the same thing that we do lean on. And the general approach I look at when I'm considering a label and any references that we're making is you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink it. And that's sort of the way I look at the art is you can guide somebody to figuring out what you're paying homage to, but you can't shove it down their throats and say, this is blatantly a X beer, a Y beer, a whatever the band, the cartoon or whatever it might be. That's sort of the way I approach it. And then I try and take a step back, one step further back, or maybe a quarter of a step further back, depending on how closely I want to do it. And that's sort of the approach that we take.
So you're actively trying to stay behind the line. You're not actively trying to push the line.
Oh, 100%. I would say there's only been a handful. I mean, we've done this for 8 years now. We a lot of the inspiration behind my brewery, whether that's the beer names, the art, even the decor in our tasting room, is sort of the 80s baby grown up. I grew up in a household that was very serious all the time. My father owned a business that we kind of had to be the prim and proper family, and he also grew up on a farm. So our Saturday mornings weren't watching the cartoons on CBS. It was going and washing the vans or tending door, and so we didn't really get like your typical childhood. And so a lot of what we do here is about re-embracing that stuff and reminding people that your childhood isn't something that you have to leave behind when you become an adult and have all these fun responsibilities that we do now. And I just think there's this sort of Venn diagram where craft beer and childhood memories overlap a little bit, and we just like to lean into that. That's sort of the inspiration here, and sort of the direction I go a lot of times with our art and our beer names. And we don't want to piss anybody off, right? We're a tiny brewery. We make so little beer. We make so little money off of any batch of beer. Half the time we're lucky if we break even. I think that's part of it, is that there's probably a misconception that we make a fortune doing this, and that's definitely not the case. And even if a brand wanted to come after us and cease and desist us, it's like, cool, you want to share the $500 I made off of this batch of beer? Like, have at it, bro.
How much capacity do you do? Like, how small is your space?
We did about 1,100 barrels last year, pretty evenly split between traditional beer and gluten-free beer. And we've steadily grown every year, but we have not added any cooperage or added any fermentation space in 4 years now. So it's just optimization and a little bit harder work, or getting one extra batch through the system each year.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead, Don.
Oh, I just wanted to ask if you've and I thank you, Brian, for explaining kind of your philosophy on parody, but have you spoken to a lawyer about where the line is, and does that guide you, or is it just your own personal philosophy that I want to stay 5 steps behind the line, guiding the horse to water, as you say, but not making it drink?
Do the lawyers that have cease and desist count as lawyers I've spoken
Well, those are
to?
learning experiences, right?
I guess that's right.
Yeah. No, I went to business school and I took a couple business law classes throughout that process. And before we were even a brewery, when I was in brewing school back in 2012, I had created a blog sort of about going through building out the brewing process. And I think I only posted like 3 or 4 times. And one of those posts was a picture of a meme printed out and framed on the wall of a different brewery. And a couple days later, I got a call at work from my mom being like, hey, the legal counsel for this other very large international brewery is calling, wanting to talk to you. What the hell did you do? And I had a conversation with this nice gentleman out in Chicago, but before really diving into it, I did consult a friend that is an IP attorney, and he kind of gave me some guidance on it. But there's a lot of general concepts that if you just Google this kind of stuff, you can kind of see, and that's sort of one of the really big pain in the butts about being a small business is intellectual property law. And the way intellectual property works, whether that's a song, whether that's a logo, whether that's a cartoon, or whatever you might want to call it, it's your job as the intellectual property holder to protect and enforce that. There's not the federal government doesn't do that. Your state doesn't do that. Once you're using it, you have to protect it. And if somebody infringes upon that, it's your job to report it to the proper people and contact those people. But once one person does it and you know about it and you choose not to enforce it with them, you kind of lose your right to enforce it. And we've been on both sides of that spectrum. We have a couple of trademarks here ourselves that we've unfortunately had to enforce upon other breweries, and it sucks to do it, but you do have to protect your brand and your marketing and everything you do. So it's just sort of been a lesson learned over not just my time in brewing, but my previous jobs, working for a minor league baseball team, and dabbled in some professional sports leagues. And it's just something we've kind of learned and picked up on. And I also think a lot of people understand it. A lot of businesses understand it, and artists understand it. As long as you go about things the right way, they feel what you're doing and understand you're not, rolling in the dough because you made a little subtle reference here or there.
Sorry, I interrupted you? Go
No,
ahead.
no, that was a good. I liked that. That's a very important. When you have a trademark, that's you need to protect it. So
we have the trademark. Like I said, we brew traditional beer and regular beer, and I would go so far as to say that some of our beer names I've gone and actually trademarked because I felt that they were things that could be used elsewhere. Our flagship gluten containing beer is a beer called Velociraptor, PHILOOSORAPPER, I think. And it was just something that I felt could genuinely slip into a song lyric or something like that down the road. And so I wanted to protect it. So we got that one. But with our gluten-free beer, to sort of help with the branding and the marketplace share that we do both, we trademarked, we actually own the trademark for the hashtag definitely not gluten-free, including the hashtag itself before it. And we had to fight for it. We had to fight the USPTO for it, but we did eventually get it. And then over time, we saw some other breweries using it as a way to sort of poke fun at gluten-free beer. And we've had to cease and desist them. And it's like, it's not only about protecting ourselves, but it's also about protecting our customer. We don't, we love our gluten-free customers, and we don't want to see them. We don't do it to make fun of them. We do it for product differentiation. And we don't want to see somebody bullying our consumer base.
Or drinking a beer that is not gluten-free that used your hashtag. And have them
absolutely
yeah
absolutely. It's it's protection in a lot of different ways.
Sorry.
With what you do, and homage / parody, whatever. Is label, like sending your labels to the TTB, is that stressful? Like, are they gonna, I don't, my knowledge of the TTB is okay, but I know a lot of people don't know how label things go in America or other places. I wanted to know if, like, since you do parody, is the TTB going to be like, what are you doing? Or do they not care?
I don't think that's something that's in their realm of
Yeah.
consideration. Like, I don't think that is their even in their consideration when they're looking at a label. They're looking, at the size, the ABV, the government warning, making sure that the packaging statements on there properly. I don't think they really dabble in that, but because the TTBs, anytime once you submit something, it's officially published. The general
It goes
public
on
can
that
look
goes
up.
on that Twitter, that guy's
Yep.
Twitter.
Yeah, we've seen people posting our labels like months before the beer is even ready or brewed, and it's just like, how the heck did they find this? And sometimes it ruins some really cool surprises, which stinks. But
Yeah.
that is technically public notice, so it's out there, and that sort of gets the clock ticking on when somebody could come out after you if you want. So it's part of the balancing game. Once something's approved, you're getting production. A brewery like us that does shrink wrap cans, we're $1,500 deep on a beer before it's even in our mash tuns. So it's you have to think about that too when you're doing this stuff, is that if that letter comes, if that phone call comes, how much are you going to lose financially if somebody decides that they do have a problem with it?
When you being a small brewer, are you like monthly or every couple of months, like scrolling Untapped or Googling your names that you have trademarks on to see if anyone else is using them? And if they are, let's say there's a brewery in California or wherever that's using one of your names, how do you go about, do you call them? Are you sending them a letter? Are you having a lawyer reach out to them? How do you protect what you own?
Well, I think Untapped is the devil, and I don't support it, and so I don't go on Untapped to look. But no, I think generally speaking, we kind of, and I think honestly, a lot of breweries would say this sort of thing, whether you're big or small. It's sort of like I don't know if this is the right phrase to use, but sort of like a not in my backyard kind of thing. Like, hey, you know what? There's I don't know how many thousands of breweries in America right now or the world right now, and everyone's producing I don't know how many beers. Like, the odds of being perfectly creative and not stepping on somebody's toes, I would have to imagine is goddamn near impossible. So when I think I have something super clever, I'll Google it. Like, I'll Google I don't know, philosopher rapper beer, and see if anything pops up. But if nothing pops up on the first page of Google, I tend to feel like it's okay. I also generally have like a never touch anything close to a New York or New Jersey brewery policy. Like, if I know of a New Jersey brewery that's even made a reference that I'm thinking of leaning into, I won't touch it, or I won't do it without reaching out to them first. Or even if, and the same kind of goes with, like, we do a lot of stuff with bands. If a band reaches out to us, or a venue reaches out to us and says, hey, so-and-so is playing here, you want to make a beer for them, I would never, and that's just my philosophy, I think. I don't want to step on anybody's toes. I still think brewing is, and again, this is probably naive of me, but I still think of the craft beer industry as the sisterhood and brotherhood that it was when I got into it 15 years ago. And so I never want to do something purposefully that would step on any of my sisters or brothers' toes in this industry. I do try and research it to the best of my possibilities, but I think it was like when Magic Hat had that issue with the number 9 and the number 6 a few years back. That's kind of how it got settled. If I remember correctly, it kind of got settled like, hey, like, we're never going to distribute our beer anywhere you distribute your beer. So, like, let's just chill the heck out.
Yeah, we cool.
Exactly. exactly. But they did that with lawyers and lots of media.
And the media. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We do it through like Instagram or maybe an email if somebody really pisses us off.
So conversely, what do you do when you receive a cease and desist? And particularly, I know that some of your labels maybe touch up not on other breweries, but on popular, well-known brands. And I can imagine that some of these large corporations are not really interested in hearing about how sorry you are, and they're more interested in paying high-priced lawyers to squash you or whatever. It's like, what do you do in those?
I frame them and I hang them up in my house.
Oh.
I do literally have the first one that I received framed in my house next to the meme that got me it.
Wow.
Because I just think it's hilarious. We've received two. Cease and desists sort of throughout the years. Like I said, the first one was a picture, literally a picture of a meme on a different brewery wall that was on our blog. And they called me and I was like, I mean, I don't have anything. We didn't even have a bank account at the time. We literally just had the blog. I was like, listen, man, how do I make this right by you? I'm not trying to piss you off. I'm not trying to steal your intellectual property. I don't make enough money off of this to make this a big problem for either of us. And while these big brands are happy to pay high priced lawyers to bully us around or yell at us or correct us, they've got far bigger things to worry about than us. And so it's cooperation, we get it, right? Like we know if we're making that reference that I would have to think that there's always the chance, there is definitely always the chance that you get that letter, you get that phone call, you get that email. More recently, we received one from a sports team. I think I can say it because nobody really.
Oh yeah,
that much.
That was a good one.
Yeah, we well, I don't know if you're thinking about the one we actually got in trouble for because we do a lot of sports references.
I didn't know that.
So
I know only have one.
I think we should leave it as a teaser. Do not say the name. Because then people have to look it up.
Yeah.
Okay. So
keep
we
talking.
made. I'm going to try and pick my words very carefully here.
Hint at it.
We are very big. We're very, very involved in all the sports teams around us as best we possibly can be. We were one of the first breweries in this particular arena. We themed a beer towards the sport because we, the team didn't necessarily want any sort of contract. They weren't even willing to negotiate any sort of sponsorship agreement at the time or, official craft brewery of the team at the time. But our beer was in there. Our beer was doing great for several years. It got to the point where this particular arena even ended up having a New Jersey beer garden for a few years. And we, because of the success of our beer in there, ended up having a whole concession stand dedicated to New Jersey craft beer. It was absolutely amazing. And this particular team put out a new jersey for the season, and and instead of saying New Jersey on it or having the typical logos or whatever on there, the jerseys just said Jersey on it. And so immediately this new uniform was soliciting a huge social media feedback and response, and people were putting writing cup on a cup or pants on pants. And so we really quickly mocked up a beer can that just said beer on the beer can. And it kind of went viral, and we looked at it and we talked to our lawyers about it, and we all felt like it was fine to do. And so we just put it on like 100 cans, and the team did not appreciate us joining in on the fun, and pretty quickly found my cell phone number and informed me that they did not appreciate it. And that arena no longer carries my beer, which is kind of sad.
That is sad.
Do you think there's a link there?
I do. I can't prove it, but it seems very coincidental that they still carry New Jersey beer,
but not yours,
but not ours. And we knew the numbers. We knew how frequently we were delivering and the volume, and we knew how frequently our friends were delivering and kind of their volume. So we know it wasn't a matter of our sales. But
See,
you know what it is? It's like, I love being at a sports arena and I love being able to get my beer, but also I know how much I sell them that beer for, and then
Right.
how much I buy it back for when I'm there as a fan. So, you know, in the long run, it probably saves me more money than it ever made me. Because, you know, if I can't be seen drinking a Labatt at a hockey game when my beer's there. So, you know, I gotta, you know, it's a double-edged sword.
I find this interesting because in that case, I would argue, I as a non-trademark lawyer, you know,
But
average
lawyer.
citizen, but I would argue you weren't even really all that close to the line on that one. And so you can sometimes get a C&D from, you know, not a reasonable party. So I
Yeah,
find
I
that
think it was a
interesting.
lot of bullying. They bullied a lot of people. And I've let them know I feel like they bullied us. I've also tried to revisit the table with them and talk about it, you know, like once some time passed. But I think deep down that one was more seated in, they realized the marketing opportunity that they missed, and they have, you know, very expensive lawyers, but they also have very well paid marketing people and advertising people and creative people. And you know, I think they I'll leave it at this. We looked into cease and desisting that team a couple months ago because
Okay.
they I think they came more close to infringing upon the label that we designed with another brewery. And I think we would have stood a better chance. But, you know, when you're talking about going up against the professional sports team, like you said, you know, you're talking about going up as team, or actually most of the time when you're talking about sports, you're actually talking about going up against the league. Most of the time, teams actually lease their intellectual property from the league so that it can survive a sale of the team.
Right.
And so, you know, you're talking about us who, you know, makes a few $100,000 gross a year and nets a whole hell of a lot less than that versus, you know, a commissioner that makes $60 million a year. You know, like it's, unfortunately, you have to pick your battles, and that's when you're absolutely never going to win. It doesn't matter how right you are.
And as a Canadian, I particularly dislike that commissioner. So
I am right there with. I don't think there's a commissioner I like, to be honest.
Oh, that's true.
I mean, one commissioner's inaction probably led to us making a lot of money. So, you know, I can't really, you know, I can't hate on him that much.
How many beers do you make a year? Like how many labels are in the works in a given year?
We typically package twice a year. And I would say we put out like 2 new beers a month, maybe.
Okay.
You know, not all of them are like heavy references to anything. Some of them are just wordplay or names that just come to mind. I have a whole like note file on my phone, and it's just, you know, you just wait for the beer to trigger with that. But you know, I would definitely be remiss if I don't also note that, like, jumping right to the parody isn't my first step. I do everything I can on my end, at our brewery's end, to reach out to whomever we are parodying, and I try and work with them, right? Like, I can't necessarily afford the licensing rights to something. And I would say I can almost never afford the licensing rights to something. Some brands might not want to be associated with alcohol. And I always respect that. I've never once in the history of our brewery, when a band or a person or a brand or whatever was like, no, we don't want that, you know, gone forward with it. I think we have a history of cooperation. Even, you know, when we receive the cease and desists, you know, we always stop it. You know, we stop distribution of beer, or we, you know, agree that, like, hey, sell what you got left and never do it again, kind of thing. Like, I think that's important to have that understanding or that history. But what I like to do is reach out to these entities and say, hey, like, we really want to do this. We think it's a fun idea. You know, we only get 60 to 90 cases of a beer. You know, our margins are slim, but what we've seen and what we've heard is that our customers love it. and it creates that nostalgia effect where whether it's a movie, whether it's a band, whether it's an album, especially with the bands, we hear that their streaming numbers go up. It creates that, and we try and release it at a time where they have something important going on, or whatever the case may be, so that they can also benefit from it. We share our artwork with the bands. So if we're doing something with a band and we come up with a cool label, we give it to them and say, hey, like, make the t-shirts, sell the t-shirts. But the other huge aspect of it is 9 times out of 10, whenever we are parodying something, and I would dare say it's even closer to 99 times out of 100, whenever we're parodying something, there's a charitable component to it.
Okay.
So we always try and do it as a way that we're giving back to the community. Yes, we understand that, making this relationship might help our sales, but to be honest with you, it's so minuscule that it doesn't really make a difference. We've done beers with bands and brands, and when they don't promote it, there's no boost to the sales whatsoever. And I would say 50% of the time we've made these actual collaboration bands or collaboration beers with brands, and done the parody or done the parody with their permission. If they don't promote it, the impact on sales is absolutely minimal at best. You need them to embrace the association for it to actually really help you. Otherwise, you're still just marketing to your same base. It's still your followers on Instagram, social media, the liquor store, the bar, that are seeing that reference, because you need the extra exposure to actually make anything off of it. And a lot of times you're also just talking about the can artwork, right? And that's typically only a 50%, 25% of your yield of that beer. So like the impact is so minimal. But like I said, what we try and do is turn that on its head and say, like, we're not trying to do that impact for us. We're not trying to line our pockets with the couple $100 extra that we might make by this association. We want to take that money, that impact, and we want to give it back to your cause. What is important to you, that we can say, hey, Departed Souls can't afford to buy the licensing rights for I don't know, the Early November is a band we've worked with, for instance. They were on tour last year. I was like, guys, we can't afford to, pay you much, if anything. We can't even afford you to come pay acoustic at our brewery. It's I was like, but we have a crossover market that is your genre of music. You're going on tour right now. Let's make a beer together. What's important to you? And we raised about $900 via the sales of that beer to a child. I forget the name of the charity off the top of my head, but I think it was like the New Jersey Home Service, and it's basically a foster care kind of system. So we've done that. We work with Andrew McMahon in the Wilderness, formerly of Something Corporate, and we've done stuff for adult or adolescent and pediatric cancer. We've done the VFW. We work with Less Than Jake a lot, the band Less Than Jake a lot, and we do Waterway. We actually donated to the Connecticut Waterway Foundation or something like that last year for them.
Thank you.
It's like we pick a cause that's important to them, because at the end of the day, you talk about a band with 5 members, and maybe they each would get, I don't know, $50 off of the profit that we make off this beer. But what can that charity do with $250?
Right.
And that's honestly the way, when we do these parodies now, that's more so the way we aim them, so that we can give back to the community and support everybody via these honestly, more at this point, they're collaborations than parodies, but we definitely still do the infringement adjacent. Is that what you called it?
IP theft adjacent.
I don't like the word theft. Can we drop that?
Okay. All right. IP adjacent. Yeah.
What would be your dream collaboration or your dream parody legally? Like, let's say you mentioned that you talked to this professional sports franchise who declined to work with you. What would be one where, if they were on board, that would be like That's your dream, your number one brand that
Yeah.
you'd like to work with.
I could go in so many different directions with that, Don. You know, like I would love to be the official craft beer of any sports team. I'd love to be the official craft beer of any league. My life before this was that. Honestly, this week, tomorrow, we're putting out a beer with Drive-Through Records, right? Like, unless you're a person my age that grew up in the music scene that I did, that probably means nothing to you, but they were the record label that so many of the bands that I grew up listening to were launched on. And so getting to do this beer was pretty damn near a dream to me.
Okay.
And we've already gotten to work with some absolutely amazing bands that, like, you know, like I said, Less Than Jake, the early November, I think when I get my Spotify thing at the end of the year telling me what I've listened to the most, I'm in like the top, you know, 0.1% of fans of those beers. But I've been so fortunate, honestly, to work with some absolutely amazing people and brands so far. So we work with some local restaurants too. Like I don't want to like shove that off. Like we work with Rasta Pizza, who's regularly voted the number one pizza in America, you know, like Ani Ramen, the bakery next to us, Montclair Bread Company. But I guess like a dream like might be a remotely realistic kind of thing, you know. Obviously, I'd love to make a beer with the Red Hot Chili Peppers. I'd love to make a beer with Kenny Chesney. I've got a very diverse music background.
Yeah. Yes, you do.
I would love to make a beer with the Jackie Robinson Foundation. I think that would be a top 3 for me as a baseball fan and a sports fan. I think we could do some really cool, something really cool for the Jackie Robinson Foundation if we work together. And I could foresee that becoming, you know, one of those cool national collaboration projects if they were ever interested. You know, I know making my Ninja Turtle beer official will never happen, but I've been blessed to become sort of friends with all the people behind the scenes of the Ninja Turtles, and they know we make the beer now, so I'm pretty cool with that. They've kind of signed off on it without signing off on it. So that's definitely a dream to me. Other musician that might be realistic, I would say the band Old Dominion, country band Old Dominion. When we were just starting out, they were also kind of just starting out. One of the first bars to carry our beer kind of made it. I helped bartend there from time to time, and Old Dominion was playing there. It might have been like the second place that ever carried our beer, and you know, in their rider was like they wanted some local beer in the green room, so he let me be the beer in the green room for it. And like we didn't even have cans. I filled some growlers for it. I think we were open for like 2 months, and they're the nicest guys in the world. They're super talented. They have blown up since then. You know, they're selling out stadiums and arenas all over the world. They're so talented, super nice guys. They give a lot back to the community. I think like of my list of bands that I would love to make a beer with, we don't have any country bands yet. So I'd have to say they would be my number one, like moderately realistic. I hope they listen to All About Beer.
This is what I'm thinking. Yeah.
This is Well, they're huge.
They're calling their agent right now.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would probably be my dream scenario at this point, like shooting for the moon. Scenario.
You could make a Red Hot Chili Peppers beer with Red Hot Chili Peppers in it.
Absolutely. We made a beer with John Hall with peppers in it. We can do it for them.
And you could put fleas in it.
No, that would probably not sell well.
Too far, Don. Too far.
Yeah, a lot of people have done chili pepper references, and I don't think any of them have gotten cease and desist. You know, like everyone understands it's fun. You know, it's fun. Nobody's making a killing off of it. We're just, you know, we're just trying to make a living too, and a lot of brewers, when you get so far into it, like when you get so far removed from being the home brewer, or you know, the slower days of when you first start and it becomes really running a business, having employees and paying these taxes and insurance and everything else, you know, fighting legislation like we are here in New Jersey, like sometimes it gets really, really hard to find the fun in it, honestly, to find the like to remind you when you did it. When you were a homebrewer, you didn't have to worry about any of this shit. And so like every once in a while, these parody ideas come to you, and it puts a little smile on your face and gives you the warm and fuzzies. And then when you see your fans getting excited about it, it's like it reminds you of why you do what you do. And especially for us, when we can tie the charity component to it, it's like, for me, honestly, it's what keeps me going. It's the charity stuff and these collaborations that they're definitely what make me the most excited to come to this brewery every day still. And like I said, I hate on tap, but like it's what helps you put up with some of the bullshit you get as a small business owner, whether that's a Google or a Yelp review, or people knocking you when you're down, or you come into a broken water pipe or a manway gasket. Like the little bit of joy we get from being able to do these parodies, like that's pretty huge, like mental boost to us, I think. And I think a lot of brewers would tell you that is like when we get these crossovers and when they hit, it's it reminds me of why we do what we do.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for all your insights. This was really fascinating, and we really appreciate your time today.
I appreciate you guys having me.
Of course. One more thing before we go. How can people reach out to you, find out about the brewery, social media, website, stuff like that?
Sure. We're at Departed Souls, SOLES, on Twitter, on Instagram, on Threads, on I don't remember what the other social medias are anymore. There's so many of them. Departed Souls Brewery on Facebook, departedsouls.com, or if you're feeling extra frisky, just jerseycity.beer is our website, and you can find us there. And I'm pretty much the guy that reads everything, so you can find me there and yell at me for copying your trademarks.
Awesome.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, thank you so much, Brian.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Estrella Galicia is an independent family-owned brewery in northwest Spain, founded in 1906. Estrella Galicia Cerveza Especial is a world-class lager brewed using the finest Spanish malts, locally cultivated Galician hops, and the best brewing practices made out of the state-of-the-art facility in A Coruña. Recognized around the world for quality and exceptional character, Estrella Galicia is a beer like no other. To learn more about Estrella Galicia, follow them at Estrella Galicia USA on Instagram.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
Bill Covaleski has played a pivotal creative role in leading the overall growth strategy of Victory Brewing Company. He serves as creative muse and guide for Victory beer brands and culinary collaborations, as well as the driving force behind community engagement. Covaleski and Victory co-founder Ron Barchet serve as brewmasters, providing strategic guidance in the development of new beer brands. In February of 2016, Covaleski and Barchet joined Finn and Sarah Demink, founders of Lakewood, New York-based Southern Tier Brewing Company, as Artisanal Brewing Ventures, a partnership platform for like-minded brewers to continue to innovate and grow, with the addition of Brooklyn, New York-based 6 Point Brewing in 2018 and Bold Rock Ciders in 2019. Prior to co-founding Victory, he earned a degree from the prestigious Doemens Institute of Munich, Germany, having completed their international course in brewing studies after an invaluable 5-year apprenticeship under German-trained Dutch brewmaster Theo de Groen. Before pursuing his craft beer dreams, Bill labored as an art director after earning his BFA from Temple University's Tyler School of Art. Welcome to the show, Bill.
Hey, glad to be here, Em.
So, Victory has been around for, and I say that, and I mean this as a compliment and not like a you're old kind of thing. But
We've
you've
been
been
around the
around.
block. Is that
Yeah,
what you're gonna say?
you've I didn't say that, you did.
I did.
But you've been around for a longish time. And so you've had classic brands like Prima Pills. How do you protect, these kind of American classics?
Yeah, I think that when we were very, very young and we were dreaming up our names and building our brands, we didn't actually protect the IP because there were less breweries and we didn't necessarily think that it was something we needed to protect. And then I kind of think about, Bob Dylan's reflection, when you got nothing to lose. Well, as you start to succeed, then you actually have something, and that is something you can lose. And the equity you build in a brand needs to be protected by a trademark, or it can be weakened by someone who does something similar.
Then yeah, what was it like in the early days too? So like you come up with stuff, were you doing all the TTB filing yourself? When did
Yeah.
did you have a beverage lawyer? Like what was it like back then? Because I mean, I
Yeah,
think a lot of people don't know that, like, man, there's a lot of law talk and stuff that has to go into running a brewery.
Yeah, great question. After we incorporated and utilized legal work for the necessities, we kind of tried to do our very best to avoid any of those bills. Probably, not the wisest idea, but we did the TTB filings, we did the registrations, brand registrations, all in-house on our own, and we were on top of it all. And somewhere along the way, I became convinced that we should also start filing for trademarks on the brands that we had built. And so we did all of that on our own for a while. But we got to a point probably around 2009, 10, when we did have a trademark firm working for us on retainer. And the other important thing about having a firm working with you is the watch, the ability to look out over the horizon and see what marks might be competitive to yours that are being registered so that you can counter them if need be. I think that the visibility aspect is something that you can't really manage yourself in-house, or at least we did not.
So like how close is Don actually just wrote this question down. I love it. Like how close is too close? If you're looking out and you see someone that makes like you've Prima Pills, they make a primary pills, or like when do you start getting involved? When do you think that it like inflicts on the trademark? Is it like the law team, the legal team that's like, whoa, do they flag it? Are they like scrolling through Untapped monthly? Like how's the watchdog happen?
Yeah, so the watch service is one where the law firm will actually scan the results and flag things for our attention that they feel may be in conflict. For instance, we thought that there was a conflict with our Golden Monkey and a registration or attempted registration for something called Brass Monkey many, many years ago. So we took action on that one.
There's just so much like gray. It's very gray.
It's
right?
a lot of gray. Yeah.
Well, and the way we reached that decision was, gold is a metal, brass is a metal, right? So it's like you got monkey and you got two metals. Like, I'm sorry, that landed too close.
Yeah.
Of course. And you have to protect what you have, because everyone works so hard. As I guess I keep thinking about, my company is trademarked. And I work really hard to make sure that like Pints and Panels, people don't cut the trademark stuff off my work, which that happens so much. It drives me nuts. So like I
they
can
put
imagine
effort into it. That's the shocking
thing.
thing.
Why did you chop it off? Why did you chop off the name of the artist and the copyright?
Yeah.
Like that's just like,
That's
oh my
theft.
gosh. Yeah, like I don't know. Anyway, we're not here to talk about Pints
Yes.
and Panels. We're here to talk about Victory.
Well,
but yeah, go ahead.
you just made a great point that our audience probably isn't aware of, and that is that it is the obligation of the trademark holder to protect their trademark. So the U.S. Patent and Trademark Office may not see a conflict and allow, like using an example we just had, Brass Monkey to be registered. That dilutes the value of a Golden Monkey trademark on the long term, and so it's up to the brewery to make that protection when the USPTO doesn't. So it's not really being aggressive, it's being protective, because as the value, as the trademark becomes weakened by usages closer and closer to it, that's value lost that can't be regained.
What do you say to somebody who says, "Oh, come on, a brass monkey's totally different. Nobody would confuse that." What is your response to that?
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about a very specific one, but I guess I'll fall back on what I had just said, Don, and that is like, okay, monkey is common between the two, and we're both talking about metals. So these things are virtually identical. And, it would be very easy for consumer confusion, because it's like, oh, well, this company has a monkey that's golden. This must be theirs as well, because it's a brass version of it, right?
And now, because the Golden Monkey has Sour Monkey, it's a brand extension for you guys.
That's what I was just about to ask.
Yeah.
It's a brand.
And so it makes sense that you would have, and you didn't know that you would have a brand extension for that back then, but still you have to look into the future.
Yeah, and so another thing that comes to mind here is that we're talking about conflicts right now when two parties think that they can either get along or they don't think they can get along. But the bottom line is not about the people who are registering the trademark. The bottom line is about the consumer and the possibility of confusion. That's why the Patent and Trade Office exists. They don't want companies to confuse the public with items that are dissimilar, but maybe viewed as the same. So, it's often trademark conflicts are looked at as two combatants, but it's not about them. It's about the audience that we don't want confused.
Yeah, when people are drinking your beer, you want to make sure that they're getting an artisanal brewing venture beer instead of some kind of, like the knockoff version of it, which would be,
brass is not as valuable as gold. Like we all know that.
That is very true. Very true, Don. So what happens when, let's say you're the law team, the legal team scrolling through, and there's a Prima Pilsner at a brewery in, I don't know, Portland, Oregon, which I have no idea. I'm just making that up. What's the protocol there? How do you make sure you're protecting the names of your products?
The process, I guess.
Yeah, the process. Yeah.
So we, as the client and the legal consultant, agree that this is something that does conflict, and we want to take action. What I'll do is, in the past, and now it's actually just with legal to do this, I will make the call to the brewery and explain to them that we see a conflict in this. Generally, their first response is, "Oh, I don't see that." And you talk through that, you get past that, and convince them that you really do see one. And then I think the next stage of denial for a lot of people is like, "Oh, come on, man, can't we just agree on this one?" And then you educate them about how my mark would become weakened if theirs was able to be registered. And then really sort of the way to close this or get to the point is, I would say, listen, our legal team says yours can't exist unless we find some coexistence that limits you geographically, whatever. And so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to put you in contact with my legal team. I'm paying this bill. You're going to learn a little bit about trademarks here. And that's what I'm going to be able to give you. I'm probably not going to give you the satisfaction of, having this trademark too close to mine that you want, but you're going to learn a little bit, which is going to be valuable to you going forward.
Yeah, because again, there's just the legal people are like, running a brewery is fun. And it is. But it's also like a business that, and the government gets involved, legal, all that stuff. And, beer can be a lot of fun, but there's also a lot of rules. And as someone who loves rules, I love rules. I always am really fascinated by the kind of nitty gritty beverage like law aspect of brewing because it's so important,
Hmm.
like unbelievably important.
I actually really, I loved the trademark aspect of it because I learned a lot from our counsel about what would constitute a conflict, and what wouldn't. And, there's geographic limitations, where products are sold as well if your markets don't overlap. All alcohol products are basically seen as having the same distribution channel. So realistically, a Prima Pils and a Prima Chardonnay could be argued to be, in conflict.
Right.
That's true. What about another country? So like,
So I learned a lot there as well. Most of the few export countries that we sold to were a part of what is called the Madrid Protocol. It is a collection of, I believe, 38 countries who have agreed to have common trademark registration rules. And so you can register in the US, obviously for US protection. And then we also registered some of our key brands in the EU under the Madrid Protocol.
that's fascinating.
That is fascinating.
I never like think about other countries because I always think about like it's just America because that's my insular American view, like every other American. And I don't ever think about because you guys distribute in the UK and other places, correct?
Yes, we do. And the export is not as robust, of course, as it used to be. And that's kind of cool because each country not we, just American brewers, but craft brewing in general has really caused brewing to be ignited across the globe. And it's cool to see all the startups. But yeah, we have Golden Monkey trademarked in Korea and China as well. It's kind of cool to see these certificates for, because if you have a brand that is popular and exported, you're usually most vulnerable abroad, right?
Yeah.
Because you're
sure.
out of you're out of the reach of someone. There's some terrible stories about how brands have been taken for a run in China, where basically all their IP is essentially borrowed and emblazoned on pubs, and everybody thinks it's that company operating there.
That was very kind of you to use the word borrowed. I just wanted to ask if you've ever had issues with non-beer use of your trademarks, like if somebody's running around trying to sell Golden Monkey t-shirts, and I don't mean the phrase, but like maybe your actual logo and everything. Have you ever had that come up?
You bring up a great point, Don. A buddy of mine sent me pictures of some really nicely designed Victory t-shirts that we never produced, on down in Ocean City, Maryland on the boardwalk. So yeah, definitely there have been times when your images have inspired people to try and cash in on you.
I have a personal question. So as people know, I am an artist and I have Victory Prima Pils art that I've drawn of your can, and I sell it on my website as a print or a poster.
Yeah.
How, like, and I've talked to people about this, about like, this is homage. Should I be getting approval? Because I am making money off your trademark. And so like, how do you feel about that? And if you say like, I should take it down, I will. But
well, hey, it's not just because we're friends having a great conversation here, but no, I feel that if you're inspired by something that we put out there in front of you and you create art around it, that's fine. That's great, right? I mean, I don't know what the legal constraints are, but towards copyright, because there's a certain percentage that the image has been altered, let's say, by the artist, and then it's like fair game, right? You're interpreting my thing. You're not simply, reposting my thing.
Yeah, no, I'm not like, I didn't, like sell Victory cans like on my, it's always something that I think of because that makes a lot of sense for label art. You have an artist and you hire someone to do label art, and then, or people are inspired by, you know, Monet or other artists or other things. And I always just find it very fascinating how, you know, we all kind of coexist in this world where everything is, a lot of the images we see are owned by other people. And then how do you, shape and use them? Actually, that's a good question. How, like when you do a brand refresh, how does that, because the Prima logo looks different than it used to. I mean, everything just has to be, does that have to go through the TTB again? And actually, while I'm thinking about it, for people who don't know what the TTB is, the Tax and Trade Bureau, can you explain how a large regional like your brewery would go about creating a label design? And I just asked you like 80 questions in a row, didn't I?
You did. That's journalistic vomit in my lap, but I can accept that.
I started thinking and I couldn't stop.
No, perfect. So I used to be the sole graphic designer for Victory from our inception to 2009 when we hired our first graphic designer. And now as Artisanal Brewing Ventures, we have a design team situated in Downingtown, our original brewery. And they report to the brand team, which is marketing, of course. And so that the process begins there with the ideation of the name, and then how the name is best visually described in a way that is going to sort of capture and glorify the attributes of the product. So that's broadly the process of it. And yes, we do have a compliance department that works hand in hand with marketing and brand, and they will then take the label to the TTB, Tax and Trade Bureau, for the COLA, Certificate of Label Approval, which demonstrates to the TTB that you have your government warning at the proper size, that you have the product designation, whether it's ale or beer and such. You have the liquid ounces to the right size and designation. So those are the kind of things that the TTB is looking for. But the TTB will also scrutinize misleading information. They essentially, it's kind of funny. What we have found is they don't want the public to be attracted to your alcoholic beverage, right? Anytime you talk about refreshing or, satisfying, those are alert words for the TTB. They don't want people to really enjoy the experience. I guess they go back to the notion that alcohol is not good for people. So you have to be sort of straight with that. And that was only answering one of your questions. So
that's all right. I don't even remember what I asked, to be honest.
TTB approval process. So that
yes, I know. I asked that. And then I have no memory of what I asked before, which is,
you also asked about, or you asked about brand refresh, and you pointed out that
that's true. See, there we go. All right.
Thank God Bill is paying attention.
Yeah.
Welcome to being our new host, Bill.
Brand refreshes are actually very important because even if the product doesn't change, sometimes if sales start to lag a little bit, you want the consumer to be like, pleasantly shocked or reminded that they love this beer, and sometimes you just need to do that visually. So brand refreshes on a visual level are something that is considered like good caretaking of a brand from our perspective. So in strange ways, you can often use a brand refresh to point back to the origins of a beer, because the original Prima labels never said anything about its origins in 1996, but now it does. So we can now sort of claim that, like, hey, this brand's been around. There's real heritage to this brand.
Just as refreshing as in 1996. I'm just kidding. Okay.
Yeah.
Exactly. So refreshing the look is, like I said, sort of good maintenance for a brand's health.
You guys just did a brand refresh recently, correct?
Of a specific.
No, because everything looks you do a very good job, and I'm not just saying that because we're chatting right now. Is the Victory refresh to me is very cohesive. And I really, really enjoy. I get distracted when I go to a bar or a liquor store or a beer store, and I like see labels that are beautiful, and I'm like, who made this? I don't know. And I find large regionals don't have that problem because you want everything to be cohesive.
Yes.
And I really like the new, and it was like a couple years ago, maybe.
Yeah, 2017, we sort of did the brand refresh where we codified certain things and made the label format and the case formats a little bit more rigid for a good reason, so that all the information would be in a proper hierarchy and it would be seen in the same place and the logos would be seen in the same place. I didn't like too much structure as a graphic designer. I was a little bit more of a free spirit. So if you go back to the older Victory stuff, it probably wasn't quite as cohesive as it is now. And it's good being cohesive. Everybody knows what we look like on the shelf, and that's important. Dirt Wolf just got a refresh, and
nice.
the Dirt Wolf image now is almost like Japanese tattoo art. I think of it as. Bobby did a really nice job with the label, and Dirt Wolf was the very last label I did myself. I guess that would have been like 2013. And then it went through two other iterations that I didn't think were necessarily as strong. And then I think Bobby knocked it out of the park with this latest one.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now. How does being an artist, because you're an artist, I'm an artist. We'll just pretend Don's an artist in a way. You're a pun artist.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
Yes.
How does being an artist and having an eye for that make you a good brewery owner?
Oh, I like that question.
Ooh, yeah. Well, I think it was very important in our formative days because, Ron had different skills than I, and we had known each other since we were 10 years old. So we knew how to complement one another, right, with our skill sets. So he could be critical of the things I put in front of him in terms of our designs, logos, and so forth, and I could take that criticism. But at the end of the day, he would respect my expertise on the matter, and then that was a task he didn't have to mess around with, right? So I mean, we did help one another stick to their lanes and not find ourselves double teamed on some works. But I think it's an area where I still have a fair amount of input with our company as well, helping guide the brand team. And now it's sort of like reminding them of well, yeah, we tried that before and this is what happened, or did you consider this? So I'm not really the dark cloud that shoots down ideas, but I'm often the one that brings up something that may have been to date overlooked in the procedure, and it allows them to reset and think about that new perspective I've offered.
Do you find being an artist frames the way you think about beer? And I'm thinking specifically, as an artist, you think about things like composition and blocking, visual blocking and all that. And does that influence the way you think about beer too, in terms of balance and where flavors emerge and all that sort of thing?
I love the question, Don. I think it's very insightful, and I think I do on a certain level. The elements of the beer and the balance between malt and hops, and that will have some influence on how I would approach the label. But in all honesty, the name is actually the more important thing because the consumer is anticipating a visual that supports the name. So the name needs to support the structure of the beer, as you kind of just defined. And then the visual needs to support the name as well. Does that make sense?
It does. It does.
Because it's all about expectations, right? The name has to give them an expectation of the flavor, and then visually you're obligated to express that name in a way that's cohesive.
I'm going to bring it back to I know I want to keep talking about art. We'll have you on again. And we can talk about art, because I did not know you were the art director. I didn't know your art background until I read your bio, and I feel like I should have known that. I love that. Always nice to meet a fellow artist. I wanted to talk about your legal team and why is that? Lawyers, everyone lawyers are scary.
I'm so scary.
Yeah, Don used to be or was a lawyer. And so Don's terrifying. But how is having a legal team help you, and what can really small breweries do on their own if they can't, because beverage law is very expensive. So how how do startups or people who have smaller breweries handle? Do you have any tips or tricks for them, being that you've been in this industry for,
Right.
again, I keep saying you're old, and I don't mean that. You know what I mean?
Oh, I'm old enough. I'm old enough to know. Here's what I would say. Again, you're right. Small breweries in the startup phase will look at legal costs probably as like, well, I just can't afford that, so I'm going to take some risks. Unfortunately, risks can be costly.
Oh, yeah.
One of the things I would suggest is look into the benefits of your state brewers guild. For instance, here in Pennsylvania, our Brewers of Pennsylvania Trade Association, we have quarterly calls with our chief counsel, who know the ins and outs of liquor regs, nationally, state level, a fair amount of employment law, a fair amount of trademark as well. And so on these monthly calls, it's populated by, anybody in the guild who has questions that they want to express. And, an attorney can't give you full advice as to what to do, but you can sort of air your question and see if it's going to need more work or not. And your state guilds really do look out for you and want you to comply and not lose on any of your risks. So I think that, for most emerging brewers, look at the benefits of the state guild and see if there's some legal help there. And, as I alluded to earlier, when you got nothing to lose. Well, once you do have a brand and it's selling on the shelf, then you got something to lose. You need to protect that brand. And filing the trademark for the trademark is, if I can do it, come on, I'm an artist, right? I have a BFA. If I can fill out a form, anybody can fill out a form. So I would encourage people to comply, because at the end of the day, when you're out of sync with the rules, it's going to cost.
And it's cost a lot. Or can cost a lot.
Can cost a lot. I mean, you might be looking at a total forced brand refresh.
Yes. Right. Yeah. I mean, when you have packaging inventory and someone else brings out the trademark hammer on you and says, no, cease and desist right now. You don't have any days to use up that stock. You're done. That's a sad day.
Yeah.
Social media these days, people get quite vocal, and there's a lot of yelling back and forth. Sometimes I think, particularly around IP theft, you see it, all the time. Sometimes that's helpful, sometimes it's not. What do you wish the average consumer understood about IP and breweries' obligations to protect their IP?
That's a fantastic question, right? Because, when you do have that third party making noise, it can distract from what the, legally needs to be done. I wish that the general public appreciated the fact that it is incumbent on the trademark owner to protect their trademark. Right. So if we allow someone to operate in beer with something very similar to ours, we're both involving ourselves in a little bit of consumer deception, perhaps, or miscommunication, and that weakens the original applicant, our trademark, and also the next in line as well. So I wish that the public understood that the need for protection is there.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, that's very important, because everyone adds a lot of noise. But you make something, and you've created something over many years, and it's your obligation to make sure that you're making the best beer possible with the best branding and the best art, and you're protecting it. You have that obligation, like you said. So
typically, the way we've seen, to Don's question, the way we've seen the public get involved is like they'll take sides. They'll be like, well, why don't you let the little guy do this? They're in Nebraska and you're in Kansas. You're not neighbors exactly. And then you explain that it's your legal protection to do so. And you have to also explain the fact that, okay, well, if we allow two of these things to exist, then somebody can start one in New Jersey as well. And then the one in California pops up. And so there are no rules anymore when you share the property.
That is true.
And trademarks are federal.
Yeah.
No, yeah.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think is there in America any kind of thing you have to do to your labels in any certain state?
Brand registration, right? In order to be properly, but brand registration doesn't look for any conflicts, right? So when we register our brands in Pennsylvania, identical products could exist in beer, and they're not going to report that. That's not their job.
Got it. Yeah, I didn't know if certain states had you had to put something on it. I know that each state in America is there's so many different things going on. I didn't know if I've been out of working in the beer industry at a brewery for a while now, so I'm a little rusty when it comes to this. So I'm very thankful that you came here today to discuss IP, trademark, all this stuff, because this is the podcast I've wanted to do for a really long time, because it's the thing no one talks about unless it's some big, someone's going after someone else, and then
unless somebody is throwing stones, you might even say.
Yeah, you said it. I didn't.
Yes.
Yeah. But anyway, Don, did you have any other questions?
No, that's my best joke. I'm out.
Okay.
That's a good one. A really good one. Something I'd like to add to this as well is, for any brewer who's maybe listening, or anyone who's thinking about going professional and listening, if you have some brand you want to bring to life and the name is somewhat similar to someone else, don't just change right away. Don't go through the heartache of it. And it's heartache for two breweries. I get tired when somebody says, "Oh, I'd never searched for that." I mean, come on, let's face it. We search for everything anymore. To the ignorant excuse isn't one that really works.
Yeah, it's very. Have you tried Googling it? If there's something that you're going to put your whole life's work into, a simple Google search is, takes 2 seconds.
Untapped. I mean, it's all on Untapped.
Oh, when I worked at the last brewery I worked at, or even the brewery I currently work at part-time at Fox Farm, we will come up, all of us come up with the name, and you just sit there at Untapped and you look and you look and you look, and you're just making sure that because you don't want to step on anyone's toes.
No.
That's even super small breweries, you have to make sure that you're creating something new, and it's really difficult nowadays with the amount of breweries. That's actually that's my last question. With the amount of breweries, how is creation at Artisanal Brewing Ventures chain? Are you guys, how do you do it? Are you just doing the simple Google search, or hoping for the best? I don't, how does it feel
We're
like it's
actually
changed for
leaning
you?
on thank you. Sorry to cut you off. We're actually leaning on Untapped really as much as Google, because it's more immediate, right? It's specific to beer. But it begins with what we call a name storm, where we just put it out there to a group, not always specific to just the graphics and the marketing team. Sometimes we expand the group into other departments, and we get a master list, and we go through things we like, and we search to make sure that they don't exist. And oftentimes, we get bounced, right? There's a great name, and we're like, oh, yep, somebody's doing that already. So we have our fair share of letdowns in the creative process as well.
It's nice to see you guys, the larger guys, have the same issue. Everybody's on the same playing field, with coming up with IP, trademark. We're all, doesn't matter how large you are or how long you've been around. I mean, everyone's on the same level.
There's only so many hot puns.
There are only so many hot puns that you can. Thank you, Don.
Hey, this would be a perfect opportunity for Don, for you to pitch your wordsmithing and your punsmanship here. Anyone listening may want to hire you.
Yes,
that's
Don
true.
at thedonofbeer.com. Please email me.
Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show today. Did you where can people learn about the brewery, or if they want to reach out to you, social media, website, all that stuff?
Still, the best source of information on the brewery is victorybeer.com. I post to Instagram, not just on the brewery, but I'm, at Bill Covaleski, and don't spend as much time on Twitter, which I guess is X now.
Who knows?
Um,
Yeah.
But yeah, I am Victory Bill, Victory_Bill on Twitter.
Awesome.
Wonderful. Great. Thank you so much for all your insights today. This has been really fascinating to
Great questions.
learn about. Yes.
That's how we get there.
Shucks. But yeah, thank you for coming on today, and we really appreciate it. So
Very welcome.
all right.
Thank you, Bill.
Cheers.
Brendan Palfreyman focuses on intellectual property matters, commercial litigation, and has significant experience efficiently and promptly reviewing corporate contracts. He has represented both plaintiffs and defendants in patent, trademark, copyright, and trade dress infringement actions. Yikes. He also prosecutes trademark and copyright applications in the United States and globally for a wide range of clients and industries. A major focus of Brendan's practice is representing and counseling breweries, wineries, and distilleries with regard to everything from corporate formation and licensing to M&A and distribution contracts. He is an award-winning home brewer, and one happy client even named a beer after him. Brendan has been quoted in various publications about legal issues facing the alcoholic beverage industry, including the Wall Street Journal, Chicago Tribune, and San Francisco Chronicle. He is a regular guest on industry podcasts such as Brewbound and Good Beer Hunting.
And the All About Beer podcast.
And the All About Beer podcast, which he will be on now. Welcome to the show, Brendan.
Thanks for having me.
So what is being a beverage lawyer or someone who specializes in beverage law? What is the day-to-day that you're doing?
So a lot of it is the same types of things that any small business would need. But there are, particular tweaks that you get into, and specifically with the craft beer industry. So a lot of my day is probably evenly split between trademark issues and then distribution contract issues. And mainly trademark, I would say. But, it also runs the gamut from corporate, employment, M&A, if you're buying a brewery or being acquired by another brewery, immigration even. Yeah, it really is a full spectrum.
And offshore tax planning for all the billions that people are making.
No.
That's just
Oh yeah.
Yeah, that Cayman Islands brewing
the Cayman
company.
Island thing. Yeah. Anyway, sorry.
Wait, how does immigration, that I'm fascinated about. How does that deal with beverage law?
Just in that, to the extent a brewery is looking to hire a foreign national or get a green card for someone or anything, or help or sponsor someone here in the U.S. from another country. That's one of the things where it's no different than any other small business, but it helps to have a full range of services you can offer to a brewery aside from just the very specific things like SLA, TTB compliance, licensing, trade practice, things like that.
What's the one thing you wish people would understand about beverage law and IP theft, given the fact that when it does make the news, everyone has an opinion, be it for good or for bad. Mostly everyone has an opinion. I'm not a lawyer. Don was a lawyer. I don't know. Can you still practice though? I don't like.
I'm on what they call the non-practicing list.
Oh, got it. Okay.
Yeah. I think it's called a recovering lawyer.
Exactly. I've been
you still have
recovering for
that
7
background.
years.
But yeah, what's like one thing you wish people like normal beverage, like beer drinkers would understand about what you do?
Two things, I guess. One, very superficial. I wish people knew the difference between trademark and copyright. So oftentimes I'll get a call from someone, hey, can I copyright this beer name, or can I copyright this logo for my brewery? And even in articles in the news, you often see the words used interchangeably. Most of the time, what people are really talking about is trademark, which is names, logos, slogans, things like that, primarily. Copyright really refers more to, generally speaking, works of art. So paintings, sculptures, novels, software. So you can copyright beer labels if they're inventive enough. If if you're looking at a particularly beautiful beer label, you can get a copyright for that. But most of the time, what you're talking about is trademark. And then the more substantive thing I wish people knew about, and it's certainly getting better than it used to be, even 3 years ago, is the idea of trademark clearance. So taking the time to research a name before you just throw it out there, and finding out the hard way that someone else has an issue with you using that name. And then relatedly, just the idea that just because something's in a different industry doesn't mean you can't use it. I'm sorry, it doesn't mean you can use it. So,
Right.
You just because you can't name an IPA Chevrolet IPA just because one's for cars. Chevrolet is famous enough that it sort of blots out all trademark usage anywhere else. You can't just call a beer Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, sour green ale or something like that. That's when you're taking, I was about to say stealing, and I guess it is stealing. So when you're stealing directly from well-known IP, it doesn't really matter whether it's in your field, in your industry or not. It's going to cause a problem.
Can I ask a little bit? You mentioned about trademark clearance. For breweries, other than like Googling the name, what else should they be doing to be safe? If there's a couple things that they should know.
Yeah, there's a couple things to do. One would be, Google or Untapped, seeing what else is out there. But don't take Untapped, for example, as gospel, because a lot of those beers on there, like you could type any word into Untapped and it'll come up. So you
Right.
get discouraged pretty quick. But, there are home brews on Untapped. There are foreign beers. There are, archive or retired beers on there, none of which, or, some of those could, very well not be a legitimate reason for you to avoid a name. But it can at least give you a sense of the scope. And if you see that, like, Allagash or Great Lakes or Lagunitas or somebody is using a very similar name, that's one you certainly want to avoid, because these are big established companies with legal budgets. The other thing you can do is run a search on the federal government's trademark site. TESS is the acronym. I think it's the Trademark Electronic Search, something else that starts with an S. But if you just Google like trademark TESS, TESS, it'll pop right up. And that's useful for finding out which marks are federally registered. And that's a great indicator of whether or not a mark is clear for your use. But even then you want to be careful that, if you just do the general, basic user search, you're going to get results for everything. So it could be software, could be tires, could be carpets, could be dog walking services. And depending on what that other good or service is, it may not be a bar at all, because, like Joe Schmo's dog walking service of Minneapolis isn't on the same level as Chevrolet.
Right. Sounds complicated, like almost like people should hire a lawyer or something.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, for the really important ones, like if it's the name of your brewery, if it's your flagship IPA, probably it's a good idea to get it. But you can at least cut down on that work of the lawyer by doing some of the groundwork yourself and saying, well, these three are definitely taken or not going to work, and then you can go to your lawyer with the one or the two that you really like and say, hey, can you run your own quick check on these just to be sure.
What other things should they be doing besides that? Just should they be making sure no one else is using it in the future once they get that trademark? Or, what other things should they be doing to protect their brand? Because, it's important.
Yeah. So once you've run the clearance, the search, and it looks okay, then you want to decide, the next step is decide whether or not you want to seek a federal trademark registration for that mark. And you definitely don't need to be federally registering every beer you're making. I usually say if it's simple as, if you get a cease and desist and the solution is erasing a chalkboard, you probably don't need a federal trademark registration for that beer name. But if you have, 1,000 labels or sleeves printed up, or you have 100 tap handles out in the market, or it's your flagship, or it's your brewery name, those are the times when you want to think about getting a federal trademark registration. There are state trademark registrations as well, but they are only good in the individual states where you apply, and they're going to be subservient to a federal registration. So you only really go for a state trademark registration if the federal is unavailable. So yeah, then that process takes a while, but what's important is getting it on getting your application on file. Because it's not all, but it's a lot of it is about a race to the office. So you want to get that application on file before somebody else does. And they have this process called an intent to use application that allows you to file these applications up to 3 years in advance of when you actually start selling a beer under that name. And then if you're lucky enough to get the federal trademark registration, then it's incumbent upon you to protect it. That doesn't mean you have to send out cease and desist or run a search every day. But you want to keep an eye on the marketplace, keep an eye on what other people are filing, especially federal trademarks. And if something treads too close, you want to try to nip that in the bud as soon as possible before the other party, has invested substantial sums into the name, or their distribution outpaces yours. But yeah, it's especially in the modern age of Untapped. Whereas 20 years ago, if you're making a beer in New York, someone's making a beer in California, they're never going to cross paths. But here now, you just type the name into Untapped and you're crossing paths instantaneously.
That's a really good point.
I actually didn't know about state registrations, because in Canada, we do not have provincial trademarks. It's not a thing. So that's interesting. What is the approximate cost of getting a federal trademark, and how long does it take?
So the federal filing fee, I want to say right now is, I want to say it's $250 or $300, somewhere around that range is what the government charges if you're already using the mark, like you've already sold beer under that name.
Okay.
And then the attorney side of it ranges. I mean, I can tell you, like my quote for everything, including that federal filing fee, is usually in like the $1,000 to $1,200 range.
Oh.
So it's not an enormous investment, especially if you're talking about the name of your brewery or the name of your flagship beer. Because, you ask someone what their most important piece of property is, and they're going to say it's the mash tun or some lagering tank or a lease or whatever it might be. But oftentimes it's the name of the brewery, because if that changes, you've lost a lot. And you have to spend a lot of money re-educating people and trying to keep the customers that you already had, especially those customers that are more casual, not your Untapped maniacs, but people who just had your beer one time at a bar or at a grocery store, and they go back to find it and I can't find it anymore. Oh well, let's try something else.
Right.
Yeah. What can breweries? They think they can do it themselves, but then they're setting themselves up for maybe some future problems. What can when should a lawyer step in? Like what do breweries think? Oh, I can do this myself, no problem, and then they shouldn't have.
Yeah, there's two classes. There's the do-it-yourselfers, which most brewery owners are. So they'll do it themselves, and sometimes they get it right, but more often than not they don't. Or they have Uncle Bob, who's a divorce attorney or a real estate attorney or something, like, oh, Uncle Bob can do it, and Uncle Bob doesn't know how to do it either. So typically, especially in the formative stages of a craft brewery, you want to get the trademark lawyer involved as soon as possible, because really the first couple things you should be doing is, on the legal side, after you've, raised some money and whatever it might be, or even before then, really, is coming up with a name, clearing the brewery name, maybe a brewery logo, and working on, really, when I talk to a new brewery, the trademark is really the first thing that you should do, the first thing you can do. Once that's in place, because you're one of you talking to investors, talking to family and friends, like you need to have the name of the brewery to be able to do that for the most part. After that's in place, then you can worry about licensing and real estate and capital raise and everything else. But I do recommend getting a trademark attorney involved very early. And it's not when you look at the expenses, as far as your lease, startup time, equipment, manpower, ingredients, the trademark is going to be by far the most affordable and extremely cost-effective thing that you're going to do among all those things.
Just about the trademarks there, like I know some people, and again, I'm speaking as a former Canadian lawyer, and so the situation might be different in America, but I know that there are some people who think, oh, well, filing for a trademark, there's a form and you check off all these boxes of the industries you want to protect the mark in. And then they get the trademark, it's issued, and they think, great, I did it. I'm successful. I saved myself a bunch of legal fees. But in fact, because they've like the issuance of the trademark actually doesn't mean it's actually defendable if they've been too broad in their industry categorization or whatever. Can you maybe speak a bit to that, or am I completely out to lunch on that?
No, you're right. You want to be careful about what goods and services you're protecting. The most basic one is going to be Class 32 beer. That should absolutely be the first thing that you select. And depending on what you're planning on offering and how expensive you're planning on being with those offerings, you might also consider protecting apparel. So the merch, the t-shirts and hats and things you're going to sell, and then beverage glassware is another common one. Also, if you're going to have a restaurant as part of the brewery, you often throw in Class 43 restaurant and bar services. But most of the breweries I work with are very small, and this is usually not something they've planned for in their budgeting. So, and each time you add one of these new classes, it adds a new filing fee that the government charges. So that's another $250, another $250, another $50. So a lot of the time, I would say most of the trademarks I file, the vast majority are just Class 32 beer. So if you get that far, you're doing pretty well.
Okay. And while you were explaining that, I went on to Untapped, and there is no Class 32 name for a beer, so it's available, people.
Oh, I
That's
love
cool.
that. That is the nerdiest thing I've ever, our legal nerdy thing I've ever heard. I love that.
Well, actually, since we have Brendan here, there is a Class 3.2.
Oh,
Maybe it's an earthquake.
I don't know. Is that a
3.
problem, Brendan?
I don't know that one.
Oh, actually, sorry, it's a homebrew, so no problem.
Oh,
See,
so
look
there you
at
go.
what I learned. This is awesome.
There you go.
I
Free and
have
clear.
I have one more question for you. Do you have any thoughts on breweries that do IP theft labels, and what are they setting themselves up for? Because I have an aversion to people who just totally rip off stuff as an artist. So do you have any thoughts about breweries that are engaging in IP theft, and does the lawyer in you seize up?
Yeah, I mean, I don't like it. It's lazy, and it's kind of like the movie industry, I guess. Now, I mean, not that they're engaging in IP thefts, but you're just trying to get a leg up on the competition by trading in on the the impact or the heft of someone else's IP. It's much less about the liquid inside of the bottle than it is about the drawing of Skittles you have on the front or whatever it might be. And actually, we're seeing a ton of that. I do some cannabis work as well, and that's maybe an even bigger issue in the cannabis industry right now than it is in the craft beer industry.
I didn't even think about that because of
Yeah,
all
it's
the
actually
edibles and all that stuff. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, for sure. And even strains, people just trying to. It's mainly a nostalgia thing, which is why we're seeing Barbie movies and things like that. People just, I guess, gravitate towards all these things from the 80s and 90s of their childhood that they can now imbibe.
Awesome.
Any other questions, John?
I do not. Thank you, Brendan.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time today. We really appreciate you getting into the legal aspects of it. It's something I wish customers and breweries knew more about and took more seriously, because man, if you get on the wrong side, it's not great.
Agreed. No, thank you guys for having me. This was great. I'm happy to come on anytime.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Brendan, can you share your social medias or anything that, or if there's a newsletter you want people to sign up, whatever?
Yes, thank you, John.
That's a great question, which involves me having to look up what my Twitter handle is. Oh yeah, so it's just my at B_ and then my last name, Palfreeman.
Awesome.
On Twitter or X or whatever it is.
Yeah, who knows? Yeah. Cool. Awesome. Thank you so much for your time today.
Yeah, anytime. Have a good one, guys.
Yeah.
Cheers, Brendan.
Cheers. Well done. What did you learn today?
I learned a lot of fun things, particularly that I didn't know there was such a thing as state trademark until today. So that's one thing. But yeah, threading the needle. How fun is that?
I mean, there's so much the gray area, and then it makes me really want to like extra protect what I've created and what I want other breweries to not, looking at Untapped is great. Googling is great. But once you have something that you're really proud of as like a brand or a label, protect it at all costs, for the love of God. You worked really hard to make a good product, and to have someone come along and snatch it from you, and then you being like, oh, it's not a big deal. It's a huge deal.
Yeah.
I think customers and beer people don't realize how big of a deal it is. So protect what you make.
Or reach out. Just say, this is what I want to do. Are you okay with it? And then at least that it's a problem or not, right?
Yeah, I mean, the brewing industry is so collaborative that you want to make sure that if you're doing something where you're like, oh, I'm not so sure about this, there's that brewery, give them a call, email them. Most people in the beer industry are very, very friendly.
Yeah.
And it doesn't hurt to ask. And if you've got a really good idea and you don't know, just check and see. That's the great thing that's the thing I say every time we have this podcast. The great thing about beer is blank. And the great thing that I take away from this is, protect what you make. And if you love something and you're not sure about it, talk about it with someone. Everyone in the beer industry should be friends.
Yeah. I do want to pat myself on the back that every time somebody said IP, I didn't giggle.
Now I'm giggling. Oh my gosh. Visit the All About Beer. Visit us, there we go, at allaboutbeer.com, and follow us on social media at allaboutbeer. And again, if you're feeling generous, visit our Patreon, patreon.com/allaboutbeer, to support this show and others. If you've got questions for the experts, email podcast@allaboutbeer.com. That's also the email for feedback, suggestions, or to inquire about supporting the show through advertising. Speaking of advertising, here is a short word from our sponsor.
Looking for an easy hop sourcing experience? Yakima Valley Hops offers the finest quality hops from right here in our valley and premium growing regions around the world. Get the hops you need when you need them, with ultra-fast shipping and awesome customer service. With a full line of liquid hop products and all your favorite varieties, no contracts are needed to brew with the best. Shop now at yakimavalleyhops.com. That's YAKIMA valleyhops.com.
All About Beer is back, and we're asking for your support to help provide the independent beer media this rich and colorful industry deserves. Visit our website, allaboutbeer.com, where we're frequently posting new content. And please consider throwing us a few bucks at patreon.com/allaboutbeer. We have low-cost memberships for individuals and small and large companies alike. Every dollar goes to help produce new articles and podcasts.
Estrella Galicia is an independent family-owned brewery in northwest Spain, founded in 1906. Estrella Galicia Cerveza Especial is a world-class lager brewed using the finest Spanish malts, locally cultivated Galician hops, and the best brewing practices made out of the state-of-the-art facility in A Coruña. Recognized around the world for quality and exceptional character, Estrella Galicia is a beer like no other. To learn more about Estrella Galicia, follow them at Estrella Galicia USA on Instagram.
Don, how can people reach out to you if they'd like to contact you?
On social media, I am at The Dawn of Beer on Twitter, Threads, and Instagram. And people can drop me an email at dawn@thedawnofbeer.com. Em, how about you?
I am at Pints and Panels across all social media, and my website is www.pintsandpanels.com. This show is produced by All About Beer. Visit allaboutbeer.com for articles, notes on this show and others, and to connect via the newsletter and social media. Cheers, everyone.
Cheers. Show me your 5-star reviews.